Every November he visits London. His old friend, Henry, has a small flat there. Marcel loves London. The beautiful buildings, the big, black taxis, the museums and shops. He loves Paris, but he loves London too. This story is about one of Marcel's November holidays. It starts at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcel is walking from Knightsbridge Station to Henry's flat. He has 2 heavy bags with him. Henry's address is 42, Old Wilton Street. Marcel looks at the numbers, 36 to 38, 40. Yes, here it is. Number 42. He sees a sign. It says, Professor J. T. Barton. Marcel looks at it and thinks, that's new. Then he goes down to Henry's flat. Henry opens the door and smiles. Marcel, he says. Come in, come in. Hello, Henry, Marcel says. How are you? His English is very good. I'm very well. And you? Yes, thanks. Good, good. Henry takes Marcel's coat. Now, he says, let's have some tea. The 2 friends sit in big chairs. They drink tea and talk. At 5 o'clock Marcel says, there's a new person in number 42. What's his name? Burton. Barnum. Barton, Henry says. Professor Barton. He's very, very clever. And that's not all. After tomorrow he's going to be famous, too. Famous? Marcel looks at his English friend. Why? It's a very interesting story, Henry says. He has some letters. They were under the floor of an old woman's house in Oxford. And Marcel says. And they're from Shakespeare to his son, Henry says. Shakespeare. Yes. Henry smiles. Shakespeare. The old lady telephoned Professor Barton, and the professor visited her. They talked about the letters and she said, I want to give them to the British Museum in London. Can you do that for me? And Professor Barton said yes. That's right. Where are the letters now? Marcel asks. In the professor's flat. He's going to give them to the British Museum tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. A lot of journalists and TV people are going to be there. Suddenly there's a big bang. And then a long whzzz. What's that noise? Marcel asks. He goes to the window. Then he remembers. Oh, fireworks. Of course, it's the 5th of November, your Guy Fawkes Day. Then a man walks down the steps from 42, Old Wilton Street. Marcel looks at him. Is that Professor Barton? He asks. Yes, Henry answers. He always goes to the cinema on Tuesday evenings. Aha. Marcel says. Why do you say, ha? Henry looks at his French friend. Then suddenly he understands. Oh, you want to look at the Shakespeare letters? He smiles. Okay. Why not? After tea, the 2 mice visit Professor Barton's flat. There's a small hole near the front door. Henry stops in front of it. Here we are, he says. Do you want to go in first? No, no. After you, Marcel says. At 5.55 they're in the professor's flat. It's very big, with a lot of old chairs and books. There are some beautiful pictures, too. Come with me, Henry says. He walks across the floor. Then he starts to climb a very tall bookcase. Marcel is behind him. They go up and up and up for a long time. Then Marcel sits on Charles Dickens's book, Little Dorrit. He can hear a lot of fireworks in the street. Bang! Bang! Bang, they go. Whee! Pow! Whoosh! There's a small, white button in the bookcase. Henry smiles at Marcel, and presses it. Suddenly, some of the books start to move. Why are they moving? Marcel says. Then he understands. Ah, I understand. There's a safe. Yes, Henry says. Now, you stay here. I'm going to open it. He takes some blue paper from his jeans. Then he climbs down to the safe. There are some numbers on the paper. He starts to read them. 55, 14 to 62, 29 to 8. Yes, that's right. After that, he puts his hands on the safe and moves the dial to the left. 55, he says. Then he moves the dial to the right. 14, suddenly there's a very, very big bang. Wow! Marcel says. That was a big firework. Henry doesn't stop. 62, he says. 29, and... He moves the dial again. 8, there, that's it. He smiles at Marcel and opens the safe. But then suddenly his mouth falls open. Oh no, he says. What's wrong? Marcel asks. They're not here, Henry says. The Shakespeare Letters. They're not here. Marcel climbs down the bookcase and looks. His friend is right. The letters aren't in the safe, but that's not all. There's a big hole at the back of the safe, and a lot of smoke, too. Marcel looks at Henry. Henry looks at Marcel. Then they climb into the safe. Look, Marcel says. He can see a room in number 40, Old Wilton Street. He can see a person, too, a tall woman in a red dress. She's sitting at a table and talking on the telephone. Do you think? Henry starts. SSH, Marcel says. The two mice sit and listen. That's right, the woman says. I'm going to New York. Yes, this evening. She writes on a notepad. Thank you. She puts down the telephone. There's a bag on the bed in front of her. In it Marcel can see some letters. The woman closes the bag. After that, she walks to the door. She opens it, and then closes it behind her. Henry looks at Marcel in the hot, dark safe. What are we going to do? He asks. That woman's got the letters. Let's telephone the police. No, there isn't time, Marcel says. Do you know her? The woman? No, I don't. Who usually lives in that flat? Two old women, but they're on holiday in Spain. Oh Marcel, what are we going to do? Marcel looks into the dark flat. Come with me, he says. He climbs into the old women's flat. Henry is behind him. The two mice run across the floor. Then they climb up a table. On the table, there's a yellow light and a small, white notepad. Marcel looks at it under the light. What are you doing? Henry asks. Marcel doesn't answer. Then he says, Aha! I was right. Can you see? Henry smiles. Yes, I can. Not very well, but, it says, Concord, 7.20.